What's happening, folks? Welcome back to Celtic Fans TV. It's a post-match pint after Dundee United 0, Celtic 5. Celtic are the champions of Scotland once again. I've got Darren and Kenny with me to go through it. Kenny, I think most people thought that might be quite a difficult game going up there to Tannadice today. Dundee United still got something to play for, fighting for a European place. But we made light work of it in the end, didn't we?
Yeah, I mean, look, the narrative from the captain, from the managers being they want to sprint over the line, they don't want to fall over the line. 15 goals in the last 3 games tells you they've sprinted over the line, and not doing that just with a strict system, doing that with a lot of diversity in how they've been selecting their forwards and the system that they've been playing up front. Today he went with Maeda through the middle, Jota and Kuhn, and he described that before the match in the respect that Dundee United would play a bit deeper and sit in with a sort of lower block, so he needed players with a bit more craft and creativity to break them down from deep positions outside the box, and they were doing that. We took the lead through that own goal, but even when Maeda moved out wide and Arne Engels came through the middle, they were still able to break them down from that low block, primarily because of the brilliance of Maeda, right? 2 incredible assists. I mean, no matter where he plays, he's just an animal this season. He's tearing people apart. He tore them apart down that left-hand side, the Kuhn cope. And brilliant to see Kuhn return to form. I think there's positions to be had up front, and getting into that Scottish Cup final, which is an enormous game for the club, we should not lose perspective of the gravity of that game. We don't win that many trebles. The first 100 years or so of this club's existence, we won 2 trebles. Just because we've won 5 of the last 7-8 years doesn't mean we should lose perspective, and there are shots up for grabs. I think Kuhn in that final on his day is probably our best option, and it was great to see him return to a level of form that should hopefully see him keep that jersey. Getting into the second half, it was just, if we won 9-0 up there under Postecoglou, and within that game I remember Greg, we were 6-7-0 up, and I remember Greg Taylor sprinting to take a corner. Busting got to take a corner at 6-7-0 up, and that just showed you, that gave you an insight into the mentality in the team at that point in time. Arne Engels was busting a gut at 5-0 to take a corner today. And that tells you exactly where the team is. The team's in a position where they're desperate to dominate. They're in a great frame of mind to try and get the treble over the line, and I think that whole outing today just puts them into a brilliant curve getting into that game. Disappointing to lose Jota potentially to injury, because he'd have a big role to play next week and maybe in the cup final. Who knows? But you could scarcely be happier coming out, and as much as the fluidity of the play was brilliant, just I think the mindset and the body language as we got over the line and the way in which they did it was as rewarding. So brilliant, an incredible way to win the title.
Aye, it could not have been any better, Darren. Just before we move on, we are on the roof at Malone's, in Malone's as always. It's on Circuit Hall Lane. If you're in the area, pop in, get involved. Darren, as Kenny says there, it's hardly a better way to win the league, to cap it off the way we've done so the last even 3 games now. Since that St Johnstone game, we were so disappointing to turn the corner and hit 5 in 3 games in a row. And again, we talked a lot about the way we've been starting games in that wee sticky patch of form, but I thought the way we started today after the first 5 or 10 minutes, where Dundee United were aggressive and they maybe tried to press us the first 5-10 minutes, felt as soon as we got a foot on the ball and started controlling the play, it was plain sailing through there.
The current theme I'm seeing from Celtic, particularly this season and even more so last couple of months, is when we get the first goal, the rest usually follow quite quickly after. I mean, you look at the semi-final last week, it takes us 30-35 minutes to score 1, and we're 4-0 up at half-time. Sort of same again, get the first goal today around about the half-hour mark, the rest come, we're 3-0 up at half-time, we're cruising. And it almost kind of takes the wind out the sails of the team, because 10 of the 11 other teams in this league, their game plan is to keep it at nothing each as long as they can, and last 15 minutes try and have a goal. But when we get the game wrapped up from half time, we even see that a few games come on up there, St Johnstone there last week, today to a bit of an extent, is once the game's wrapped up you see the gears go right down. It becomes basically just both teams know the results in. It just becomes basically seeing it to the end of the game. And listen, I've not got any problem with that. We've seen it a lot with Ange as well, where both teams away in the first half and then you had the game won by half time. It beats anyway. Well, some games this season where we've had it to nothing each, Johnston's a perfect example where we're 1-0 down and we cruised and we left it too late to have a goal last 15 minutes, and then we end up losing points that way. But to have the league wrapped up in April is very good. You almost felt like you expected it this season, especially from going all the way back to August, the first weekend, Rangers slipping up against Kilmarnock. You know, us getting, I think it was by middle of September, I think we were 11 points clear. But it's easy to let that slip if you don't concentrate on, you know, your games. Rangers obviously struggled with the manager and certain players and stuff, but that's their problem. We just stuck to our football and we won that. Not to say it was the most perfect season, we had some spells, in particular just last month there, where you're questioning. You don't question the players because you know the players are good enough. You just question the approach getting into the game and think we shouldn't be losing that because we've got the players, we've got a great manager, we should be winning that. But it's easy sometimes just to let that complacency get into your head when you know it's not already wrapped up, but you're basically wrapped up, not mathematically. So delighted to get the league wrapped up in April, and sort of similar to the game we had last season. I think the three of us done that 5-0 against Kilmarnock. Obviously I'm a bit gutted I wasn't at the game today, but watched it from TV and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Aye, Kenny, I thought we played some brilliant football all afternoon. We get the breakthrough. I actually thought it was Jota that scored at the game. I didn't know it went down as their own goal. You've alluded to Maeda's assists. I think the first one, the thing I really liked today was Arne Engels. I thought he was good. Again, all game, but in the build up to that second goal, he takes the ball, drives forward with it and picks out a lovely ball to Maeda on the left hand side. That's something I think he's got the ability to do, and I would like to see him affect the game much more throughout and play and really take the game by the scruff of the neck. I think he did that today. Lovely ball out to Maeda. I think the finish for Kuhn, first time on his weak foot, incredible really. Nice to see him get back on the score sheet and get a double, as you said. But I think some of the football, even second half, Idah gets his goals. I think that was really good build up as well. Johnston with that familiar underlapping run, a great cross, and then a lovely glancing header. We played some excellent football.
We do tick a lot more when Engels is in that type of mode. Engels is a difficult one to judge because at the end of the season, a lot of people say he's maybe been underwhelming. A lot of people will say he's an absolutely superb talent. You'll get a whole range, spectrum of sort of assessments of Arne Engels, but when you look at him today, it's almost it's a couple of the balls that we're playing that we're carving home. It's like a trademark ball where he can rake these balls in from deep at an angle and put men through. And I've not seen that many Celtic players in the past being able to do that. And I thought he was excellent. He played with a real sort of presence. You could feel that his confidence was there. And hopefully that's something that is going to kick him on a bit towards these last 5 games and into the cup final, because he's going to be a really important player within that. When we play with Kuhn in that type of mode, he was a bit angry today, it would seem. After he scored, he sort of gestured to the fans as if to say, you know, why are you giving me stick? I don't necessarily like that, right? Because we've given him a lot of adulation. You're playing for Celtic, you're getting paid a lot of money, you're playing at the highest level of the game against Champions League. You've got to also take a bit of criticism. It suggested that he wasn't that happy with the criticism, but that's fine if he cares about it and he's angry about it, so be it.
And it motivates him.
Yeah, and it motivates him, and it was a lovely fit. He just looked back to that player that he was before January. I don't know why he's fallen off. Hard to tell, but you know it's in there, so it should come back. And McGregor was excellent as well. McGregor was just a Rolls Royce in there again. It was almost too easy for him. He's just dictating the tempo of everything, rolling around. He makes it look easy, but it's not easy to do that. So, yeah, the combination play, everything, Maeda's just a nightmare for people to handle. It's started to peak again. There was a bit of a lull after that Bayern Munich defeat. Is that acceptable? You know, probably not, but I can sort of understand psychologically why it would happen, because up until that point, even from July when they were beating Chelsea and they beat Man City, right through till January, that's a 7-month spell where they were excellent, they were really consistent. You lose to Bayern Munich, I can sort of understand the mentality of that. You know, that's a bit of a drop off in terms of your objective. You hit a bit of a lull, but they've rolled back to form at the right time. And it's really important that they keep that up for these next 4 or 5 games. What I would not like to see is rotation, a bit of sort of sloppiness creeps in, and then we get into the cup final, throw our best 11 in and hope they perform again. I think there's a balancing act for Brendan Rodgers in the next sort of 6 weeks. I'm confident he'll get it right, but it looks like maybe Kuhn coming in that right-hand side, something that we're going to benefit from again.
Yeah, absolutely. Darren, in terms of Engels, as I say, that's a performance today I want to see a lot more often from him. I think he's had a good first season, really good in terms of his goal contributions. I just think it's that presence, as Kenny talked about, and maybe a bit of aggression you just like to see from him a bit more consistently, but you can tell he's got all the attributes there what you made him.
Today or overall?
Both.
Overall, it's just been. Overall, I've got to give him thumbs up. Like, there's been certain games where, you know, because he's Celtic's most expensive player. Whenever we draw or lose, realistically, he's going to get the majority of the flack, especially online, and that's fair. As a grown man, he probably has to accept that and not say take a bit of responsibility, because the whole team have to take responsibility when we lose or we don't play well. But when you're that multi-million-pound player, he realises there's a lot of eyes on him, and at 21 it can be a lot of pressure on you, especially come to a new country, new team. But for your first season, I think he's handled it well. Even just going back to the very beginning, when he made his debut in the Champions League, just stepping up to take a penalty. Bravery, very brave for a young man. But there has been games where he's just been completely invisible, or he's just looked like his heart's not in there. But I think, you know, in isolation, I think that's expected from a young guy, and I think with next season, if he chooses to stay, maybe he might want to move on. I very doubt it, but let's just cover all angles. Too early for that. I think next season, once he's in a pre-season with the team, I look at Kuhn, and when he joined last January, he had a torrid 6 months, and people were saying, "Oh, he's not good enough." And then, as you know, Kenny was talking about the pre-season games against Man City and Chelsea, you're like, where was that Kuhn from January to May? I think we might see that with Engels as well, where if he has a good pre-season, you might see him from August to October, just hit the ground running, being that midfielder that we see. And you also need to look as well, if Fatati leaves the club, Callum McGregor's not getting any younger as well. It might be a sort of passing the torch moment from McGregor. I'm not saying he's retiring or that, but you know, he might have only 1 or 2 seasons left in him. And then you look at Engels saying, can you be the next Callum McGregor? So it's a lot of pressure on him, but I think with the right coaching, obviously Brendan Rodgers there, he talks a lot about how he coaches young players. He's got a great track record with young players, so I think going off the whole season, I think it can only be better going forward, especially next season.
His age is a big thing in his assessment. He's 21 years old, right?
Yeah.
Even Bernardo came in. Bernardo took time to settle. Bernardo looked like a bad sort of loan for a while, and he's you know, over time he becomes someone you're really comfortable to pay a reasonable amount of money for. He's you know, if he comes in, he's 28 years old, Arne Engels, and you pay £11 million for him, you probably would be sitting here thinking, is that really the wisest thing we've done? But I think the fact that he's just a kid is something we really need to recognise.
Kenny, the messages have been out about the Celtic Player of the Year awards. It's coming at the time for the PFA awards as well. You wouldn't be surprised to see Daizen Maeda absolutely clean the floor out of the Player of the Year awards again today. I think we've seen an incredible performance. He didn't get on the score sheet. You've touched on the 2 assists already, but again, I feel like we've mentioned this about 1,000 times in his spell with the club, but every time I see it, it amazes. He's in our left back area fighting for the ball against a wide player. At 86, 87 minutes today, it's 5-0. We've won the league title. The context almost doesn't matter to him. He's like leaving everything on the pitch, regardless of the circumstance. And I've never seen I've scarcely seen a football player give so much to the game, let alone a Celtic player.
Yeah, it's just the way he's built. I suspect if he could play for any team in Europe at any league level, and he would still be doing that in the 94th minute. But what he's added this season is composure and calmness and a quality to his output. If you look at his 2 assists today, there's real quality, particularly I think it was his first one. That ball whipped into the back post for Kuhn. It was a beautiful way he crossed the ball. He did have one erratic moment he was put through actually, and it was like old Daizen. But he's had so few of those this season. I was hoping to get a goal today to try and nudge him towards that 40 mark. I think surprisingly there's only like 7 or 8 people in the history of the club that have scored 40 goals. So it'd be nice if Daizen, he can still do that. I think it would be fitting if he was able to do that. The big question is, can we keep holding him? Because you take him out of that team. He's played almost every game for us. You take him out of that team, that's a big loss. That's not like the loss of one player, that's like the loss of 3 men, such as the way he performs on the park. So the club need to do everything they possibly can to keep him. Will that be enough? They can offer him 30 grand. You know, if someone comes in and says, well, we'll just give you 90 grand a week, Daizen, he's a human being. It's probably his last chance for a big move. If he stays here till he's 29, 30, he's not going to get the same sort of monetary opportunities he could do in the summer, so that's going to be a big thing for the club. But let's enjoy him while he's here. He's been here, he's been a brilliant servant. We paid, $1 million for him or some ridiculous sum? And today he was the best man in the park again, in my mind, clearly.
I feel like he's 2 assists today. Daizen Maeda 2 years ago puts both of those into Rose Ed. You can see the confidence and the improvement in him. I don't know where it's came from. I don't know if it's Brendan Rodgers, but it just...
Maybe just natural maturity as well.
I wouldn't rule Brendan Rodgers out of it though. Brendan Rodgers' history with players that have got potential but are a bit unrefined is strong. He brings them on and he brings them at the fore, so I would imagine that the way Brendan has coached him and just changed his frame of mind will have played a big part in that.
Darren, the thing I think about Daizen is, see when you've got somebody like that on your team, there's no hiding, there's no shirking any responsibility. When he's putting that level of effort in, you need to try your best to match him. And I think that's a brilliant mentality to have in the squad, and to have somebody like that as a role model for the rest of the players. As Kenny says, if we were to lose him, it's like losing 3 players. That probably would be what it felt like in terms of the impact on the team, not just because of his output in terms of whether it be goals or assists, but also the way he presses, how aggressive he is, but just having that focal point for his teammates to go, that's the example we need to follow.
It's a great example to his teammates, and not just his teammates, even the young guys coming through the academy right now who are watching the first team, and they're saying, like you have just spoke about there, last couple of minutes when the game's done and he's chasing lost causes. It's just something I feel you can't teach that. That's just a work ethic that might be inherited from your family or taught to you from a young age. You just can't pick that up. I feel like it's something that you're either born with or you're not born with. And if I'm a Celtic player in that team in any other position, maybe bar the goalkeeper, and I see him doing stuff like that, it must just encourage me to say, look, if he can do that, I feel like I'm trying my best, but maybe I've got another gear deep down. I can work harder because he's shown that he can work hard. So he's just a great example to the team, and you might not see it if you're just casually watching a game, but maybe if you're somebody who's a coach who analyses games in every area of the pitch, you might see, that player might not have done that if Daizen Maeda went there, particularly in the left back area. If it's Greg Taylor or Jeffrey Sloop, it must make them feel so much better, particularly games in the Champions League, for example. We just did Bayern Munich there. Right winger, they've got Michael Olise, who's a fantastic player. I think Jeffrey Sloop played both those games. He must have felt a whole lot better knowing that if Olise was one-on-one with him, he knew he would have probably just had to hold him up for a wee bit, and he would have got support from Daizen Maeda. And I feel like, I'm not digging him, but Jota, for example, he's not that type of player. He's more your flair, technique player who stays forward, doesn't come back. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but with Daizen Maeda, you have that sort of jack of all trades, where now, maybe not a couple of years ago, but now he's scoring goals. I think he's always had assists, but he's getting a lot more of assists.
Yeah.
And he's just covering all areas of the pitch. And to me, whether he's playing out wide like he did today, because it was a bit of a change from him. Obviously, Idah coming on earlier, drifting out wide, and still, because he's not played there for a while, I don't think. In fact, I tell a lie, he played there last weekend. But it's a real mark of how good he is that he can go from a striker to a left winger, because particularly when you're playing an attacking position, if you're chopping and changing a lot, it can really affect your concentration or your mindset. But he just seems to take it on his chin and you go, okay, I'm playing up front, and he'll go and score 2 goals, he'll score a hat-trick. Okay, I'm playing out wide, he'll go and set up. Or last week when he was playing out wide, he goes and scores 2 goals. Like, if you told me at the start of the year Daizen Maeda would be doing that week in, week out, I would have asked you to give your head a wobble.
Aye, he's incredible, one of a kind, absolute one of a kind, and I think it's really difficult to put a value on just how much he is worth to this Celtic team. Kenny, this is the 13th league title in 14 years. It's the 4th on the spin. There's been some talk in the last couple of weeks in the Scottish media about it being tedious and boring, Celtic winning all the time. I said to Martin outside the stadium, you could never get fed up, you could never get bored of this, and that's the case from a supporter's point of view, isn't it?
Yeah, because although we've only 13 out of 14, football can change quickly. It's vulnerable. When Ange Postecoglou won a treble, Rangers are a mess. You think, well, we'll win the league for the next 10 years. The next season, within a few months, Rangers were favourites in the bookies to win. They were deep into the season. They were ahead of us. So you simply don't know what's round the corner. And history tells you that, well, it's unprecedented to do 13 out of 14, right? So it's flawed to say that it's easy, and it's just because there's this sort of ridiculous hypothesis that Celtic have got all the money and looked after, and they're the sort of club that have got the advantage. It's just an absolute nonsense. Celtic have had £0 injected into them since as long as I can remember. Dermot Desmond does not put any money into Celtic. Rangers have money ploughed into them year after year after year. If anything, they've got the financial advantage of people backing them. We have none. So it's not like Celtic have just wandered into this position because they've been gifted it.
It's organic.
It's organic, and it's been done through structure, and it's been done through great appointment of manager. The Postecoglou appointment, you might say, okay, well, we went for Eddie Howe, that was a bit pot luck, we got a couple of titles out of that, but that's the wrong way of looking at it. That was a stupid appointment at a difficult time. Brendan Rodgers in twice across that 13-year period has been a masterstroke. I'm sure it was difficult to get him in this second time. They were under pressure. They were under pressure because Postecoglou left when they didn't want him to leave. He left, probably a bit prematurely. So the club have done brilliantly to appoint the right people to get that 13 titles over the line, and we should not take it for granted. It's difficult. I sat through 9 in a row of Rangers. I'm bringing up a young boy that's sitting through all this, and I've got to try and instill into him that this one day will not be the case.
I feel like to go back a few years ago, I feel like Postecoglou's first season was a real defining moment in the 4 years of success that we've had, because I agree completely with what you said there, Kenny, that football can move really fast. And if you look at the COVID season where Rangers won by 25 points, realistically, they should have capitalised on that, and they should have won probably the next 1 or 2 seasons after that. But with us taking action and them just standing still and not capitalising on their advantage, allowed us to come back, win that league that season, go into the Champions League and get the investment from that. So this idea that Celtic have just got all this money in Scottish football and it's too easy for us, it's nonsense, because we done the right things that year to get ourselves back to that position where we could get the money from the Champions League. It's not as if we just got that money from the Champions League because we're Celtic. We had to earn it back after losing it by quite a margin 4 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kenny, Brendan Rodgers, another league title for him. If Brendan Rodgers is a Celtic manager, Celtic win the league title. That seems to be how it goes. He was very keen to point out that he'll be here next season. I think he said 150% in the broadcast interview. I think he said 200% in the post-match press conference. We know he's going to be here for next season. You cannot deny or discredit or take away anything from the work that he's done as a Celtic manager. And again, we see the value of him this season. We got the European sort of validation we were looking for, and much more credible performances at that level. But yet again, the thing that never seems to waver when Brendan Rodgers is a Celtic manager is the domestic dominance.
That's him now completed his 5th season. I think he's only lost 1 trophy within his entire tenure. That game at Kilmarnock, the 3 of us were. Yeah. And now he's taken us to a point whereby we're within 10 seconds of beating Bayern Munich in their own patch in a knockout game in the Champions League. It's very difficult to take Celtic much further than the statistics I've just described to you. He's an elite level coach, Brendan Rodgers, I truly believe that. And people in England might snuff at that a little bit, because think, he's up in Scotland, he can win everything. But look at what he did down in England. What he did down in England is just consistent through his entire career. Okay, he had a bit of a pour out towards the end of his campaign at Leicester, but there was a big backdrop to that in terms of financial disadvantage that the club was going through. And he took them to a couple of in the cusp of a couple of Champions Leagues, won trophies with them. Everything he's done in his entire managerial career has been a success. And it's no coincidence that if we keep hold of him, we will continue to be successful. I was hurt as anyone when he left the first time. The way he left the first time remains dreadful. He's restored that, I believe, emphatically now. He didn't need to come back to Celtic. He could have earned a lot more money going back somewhere else. His stock's high enough that he could have went to, I'd imagine, a reasonable club in any one of the top 5 leagues in Europe.
Didn't he? Turned in Saudi for us.
He came back to Celtic. And I think he came back in part because he wanted to restore the damage that he had created before. Because I think he underestimated what he'd done when he'd left. And he came and he said, I will stay here for 3 years. Well, that's quite a big statement in the current football climate for a manager to say, I'm not going anywhere for 3 years. That's really unusual. because such is the shelf life of a manager, such is the fast pace of the modern game. Managers can get bored after 18 months if they do well and look for bigger things. He said, no, I'm staying for 3 years. He might be bored now, we'll never know, but there's no way he's moving next season because he's committed to the club. He deserves a lot of credit for that. I think Brendan Rodgers has to go down in the history of the club as someone that has made an incredibly positive effect on the success of, not just domestically, but now in Europe, Celtic. And fans need to put to bed what he did at that point in time. I felt it was as awful as anyone, but at this point in time, and God knows what's going to bring next season, hopefully he's just going to take his record even more. I think he's someone that should be heralded as a Celtic manager, because what he's delivered has been almost unprecedented around in the history of the entire club.
Aye, Darren, I think his record is absolutely incredible. The big question with his statement that he'll be here for 3 years, and again affirming that 200% he's going to be the Celtic manager next season. I suppose the big question for us all is he going to be the Celtic manager the season after next? His contract is going to end at the end of next season, and if things keep going the way they are, as Kenny says, the success keeps coming at the rate that it has done with him as a Celtic manager, you've got to think the club want to keep him, and so the ball goes to his side of the court, and it's about, does he want to stay beyond 3 years?
I doubt it. Sorry for MD that's gutted for me saying that, but I feel like when he came, he did guarantee that we'd be here for 3 years. If he decides after 3 years that he wants to leave, then I don't have any problem with that. He's more than earned his name into the Celtic Hall of Fame, in my opinion. Just to, off the top of my head, just to state a couple of things he's done. First season, an unbeaten treble. Second season, a treble. This season, very likely a treble. And he's also the manager that was in charge when we overtook Rangers on trophies. He's now the manager that has equalled trophies with Rangers in 55, and he could be the manager when we overtake them to get to 56. I know there's a lot of older generation who never thought they would live to see that day, so maybe us a wee bit younger might not see it as such a big deal, but I think, you know, that achievement in itself is enough to put yourself in the Celtic Hall of Fame. I have a question for you actually that I'd like you to answer. Do you think that he puts himself in the ranks of, you know, Martin O'Neill? You know, I can't say Jock Stein because Jock Stein's one of a kind, but does he go up there with, you know, Martin O'Neill's, all those other Celtic managers that have won those fantastic achievements?
So I probably think that the list of Celtic managers goes Jock Stein, Martin O'Neill, Brendan Rodgers, in terms of trophies, in terms of the records. You think about the invincible treble, you think about the 69 game unbeaten run, the sort of dominance that we've enjoyed. I mean, the dominance, even under Martin O'Neill, I know it was a different time and the Scottish football landscape was different, and Martin O'Neill was the guy who first turned the tide from Rangers dominating for a decade. Even in Martin O'Neill's time, the dominance wasn't the way it was under Brendan Rodgers. There's obviously loads of other managers in there, far too many to mention, but I think he's definitely in the conversation of...
Does he get a statue?
Well, of course not, because only Jock Stein has got a statue, but Kenny, he's in the conversation. Jock Stein obviously stands alone and will do so forever, but he's in the conversation with the rest of them, isn't he?
It becomes a challenging comparison because Martin O'Neill and Henry Larsson, Chris Sutton, he was competing in a time where the economics of football were very different, and he genuinely could threaten some of the real big giants in European football regularly, because Celtic were spending £6 million in players, the top teams in Europe were spending 12 million. Now we're still spending 6 million, they're spending 100 million, right? So it's hard to compare the different backdrops.
Yeah.
However, Martin O'Neill, he blew a league title, right? Brilliant for Celtic, loved the guy, brilliant character, loved the club. But if you're statistically, Rodgers is ahead of him. Rodgers has lost, in 5 domestic years, has lost one meaningful game that cost us one trophy. Martin O'Neill didn't. He lost a lot more than that. I would put Rodgers ahead of O'Neill. Just different eras, hard to compare. But if you're having to compare them, I would put Brendan Rodgers slightly ahead of Martin O'Neill. And in my Celtic supporting lifetime, that means that, and I'm 44 years old, he would be the best manager that I've ever observed.
I mean, it's difficult to argue, certainly with the trophies. It's so down to opinion and perspective.
I feel like one thing we didn't speak about as well is his record at Hampden as well.
Incredible.
Every aspect, you look at what he's done at this club, it blows your mind in a way. And it's almost now.
His record in derbies this season aside.
This season aside, I don't know what it was before he left. I think did he lose 1-13 in his first spell? Last season was 3 wins and a draw. This season's been 2 losses and a win. So, you take that overall, it's still terrific. I know, like he talks about the different eras of football at the time. Periodically, in Rodgers' spell, there has never been a competitive Rangers side for him to compete against over the course of a season.
And that's an important factor in the debate as well.
But it doesn't take away any of his achievements, because, Scotland is a 2-team league, but, we're not tied down to how good our rivals are. Depending on our success doesn't depend on the failure of our rivals. Our success depends on how good we are as a football team, and the fact that we are better than all the other 11 teams in the country, and that's partly due to majority due to Brendan Rodgers.
Yeah, absolutely. Kenny, we go to Ibrox next weekend. It's, I suppose, Scottish Cup final, outstanding. It's the only blotch on the season that we've lost twice to Rangers. I'm sure that the players and the manager are keen to right the wrongs of the previous 2 games. I think they'll all look at it and think we haven't really done ourselves justice in these last 2 derbies. And next weekend, yes, it doesn't have as much riding on it as your usual derby, because we have won the league, the job's done. But there's always a lot riding in these games without that, and I think next weekend we will be motivated to correct that, but I think maybe just need to guard against a bit of a drop-off when you have the big pressure release of getting over the line with the title.
Yeah, but there's quite a distance between that game and the Scottish Cup final, right? So
yeah.
that is almost becomes a cup final in itself. It's complete focus. Brendan Rodgers will have shirricked them. Well, we said after they lost 3-0 at Ibrox, they would have shirricked them, and they came out and performed fully at Celtic Park. So maybe it's flawed to say, well, they're going to be great now because of that. They didn't learn from their previous mistakes. The difference this time is Callum McGregor's fit. He said in his post-match interview just there, Brendan Rodgers, that Arne Engels has a great season and he should be sort of looked upon as someone that's come in and developed well, but however he recognised when he put him in against Rangers in that number 6 that he floundered. There's going to be a big difference when McGregor sat in there, and McGregor's looking fit and hungry, and you can just sense by looking at the way Callum's playing at the moment that he's going to have a big influence on that game next week. What's he going to do up front if Jota's injured? That's a big call, isn't it? I'm not sure. They absolutely despise playing against Tavernier. Cannot cope with Daizen Maeda out wide, but their centre halves are going to struggle to cope with him as well.
I would say, see just on that, sorry to interject, see just on that, I think the only option is Idah and Maeda wide, because I think Yang's injured. If Jota's out,
you could go Forrest
there,
and Kuhn.
Forrest on the left-hand side.
Left's not going to work, is it?
Sorry to interrupt the game. Do you think that would be the perfect occasion for Forrest to get his first goal?
Amazing,
Can we talk quickly on Jay? I don't know. I've not seen the.
That's the next item.
I've not seen the full-time reaction, so I don't know if you spoke about him. But 28, am I correct? 28 major honours. 26 major honours, making him the most successful player in Scotland. I think, I've been on this channel for 3 years, and I think every time we do this, we talk about James Forrest every year. But for such a, just a young guy when he first broke through the scene, to consistently play and score every season for how many years?
15, and we're waiting for 16.
15, 16 years, and let's not be fooled, at his prime, 2016, 2017, James Forrest probably could have got a move to a Premiership team, but he opted to stay, and he's basically now cemented his place as, not individually, but in terms of honours, one of the greatest players of all time, certainly of my generation anyway, because I think I'm of similar ages of James Forrest, so I've grew up seeing him from a young kid breaking into the first team to, under Rodgers' first spell being basically him and Sinclair were the two main guys on the wide areas. Obviously now as he reaches his kind of his end, he's not really in the team as much, but his impact, I think you covered it last week after the St Johnstone game, that he was the danger man and he's still got it in his locker at age 33. So he just feels that it's an eternity that he's been here and that we don't appreciate it, and one day he won't be here. He will most likely retire a Celtic player, and we just need to thank him for his service. And Cal McGregor's not far behind him on 24 as well. I'm sure he'll maybe try and stay on the heels of James Forrest as well. But the two of them, just young guys from Scotland who grew up coming through the academy, tremendous achievement for the two of them.
It's incredible, and that's a good link, because that is the next thing I want to talk about, Kenny. James Forrest, the most decorated player in the club's history. It's mental. I think if you told somebody that when he made his debut against Motherwell, you would never have believed them. And there's obviously some incredible names that he shares that company with at the top of that most decorated list. But it's incredible for him, that accolade.
Yeah, I can still remember when he sort of broke through. And I remember watching him against Utrecht in the Europa League when he was just starting, and he caught your eye. You knew that there was someone that could probably bring longevity to the starting 11, because the way he plays the game is pretty simple. He's not like let's do step overs and try and overcomplicate the game. James has just got a brilliant natural understanding of how to get the ball into the box, how to get by a man by dropping the shoulder, just being direct. He gets a lot of goals for a winger because he instinctively is able to read the game and know how to affect it, and I think that's why he's had longevity in the game. And I think in 2018 he did the Daizen Maeda of this season and swept everything in terms of personal awards, and he was superb that year, and he was brilliant internationally at that point as well. And at that point there was talk about Spurs coming in from big teams, and he could have went. There's no doubt he could have went, but he stayed. And I think he's got another extension actually into next season, which is fine, because he seems to be into this pattern now of just putting his feet up for 6 months and coming out and helping us get over the line in a really effective way, which is fine. So, brilliant servant, someone that we should just take complete pride in being able to watch in our lifetime. Celtic's nearly 140 years old as a club. For him to be the single person that's won the most honours, and for us to be able to watch his entire career, is a privilege for us as much as anyone else. And he's a humble, brilliant little guy. He's not a prima donna. He's not someone that you look at and cringe about his output in the media. He keeps himself to himself, and he's a brilliant professional that you still feel pride in watching to this day. Hopefully he gets one more goal this season to really mark his statistics even further.
I think we're all crying out for that. I think every time you get the ball today, everybody was screaming at him, shoot. But it's a brilliant story. I think the fact that he's come through the youth academy to become the club's most decorated player in this era. Obviously, you expect that of Scottish players coming through at Celtic in years gone by, but where the game is at now, with so many players coming in from different countries and the club spending so much money in transfer fees, for a player to come through the youth system, stay for so long and become the club's most decorated player, it's an amazing story. Darren, Ibrox next week, that's a big game. Obviously that and the cup final are the two games that you look to now. You've got to hope we can go there and perform, and that would just be the icing on the cake to beat them next week, wouldn't it?
Well, me and Callum did a video after the Ibrox game, and we were all pretty seething at the time doing the video, and I said at the time that when we go to Ibrox next, I want to see a reaction, I want to see some character. I don't, it sounds silly, but I don't care too much about the result. Obviously I don't want it to be another 3-0 and I want us to win, but I want to see the character from the team, the character that was missing from the New Year fixture. I want to see us get stuck in, I want to see us get yellow cards, I want to see us squaring up to Rangers players, especially Raskin. I want to see them all squaring up to them, getting their faces, agitating the crowd, because that is something that, well, it's a bit different now because finally we're getting a few fans in there, which will inevitably give them a shred of encouragement. But it's not a must-win because it doesn't matter because we've won the league. But we want to go there, we want to put on a show, we want to put them back in their box. and I want to see us crush them.
Darren's right. It's about aggression next week. In that last game, we were little boys. And it's not good enough. It's not good enough in any Rangers game. When you look at, remember under the lights when we beat Rangers 3-0 and Cal McGregor came on with his face mask and he was bullying them all over the park? That's how we won that game. We need that again. We've not had that in the last 2 games. We've not had anywhere near it. As you think into the transfer window into next season, we need to sign someone who is an aggressor, who might not have the technical skill but has got the physical strength and is prepared to sort of put the boot in a bit. We just don't have that anywhere in the squad. McGregor can do it, and hopefully he'll do it next weekend. I'm confident he will. But I think in terms of the transfer market, we actually do need someone that's got a bit of physicality in the middle of the park.
Aye, big game next week. Looking forward to it. That's it for the post-match pint tonight. Like the video, give us your own thoughts on today below, and we will see you during the week for the build-up to that derby at Ibrox. Enjoy your night. Thank you.